Sometimes government contractors, we overcomplicate our plans for success, right? We're delaying our success by years more often than not because we put too much into our plans. We overcomplicate it. If we simplify our plans for growth and follow proven guidance, we're going to avoid success that people like me had to go through for a long time. I had success in the government contracting world as a government contractor, small business owner. I had twice had success in the government market, but I would have had much more success or much faster success if I had known what I'm sharing with you today, or what I teach in each of these live events. Right? There's three things that are going to help you scale your business predictably in the federal government market. The first thing is follow the three phases to revenue maturity. So 3 phases to revenue maturity. That's the first thing I want to talk to you about. Second one is follow the 3 paths to federal market revenue. And then the third one is follow the 7-step process for revenue success that I've created and that I teach. It simplifies our path to success. So that's what we're going to talk about today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I want to welcome you again to my live federal sales training where I teach tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process, A to Z, we're going to have predictable, repeatable success. And that's what I want for you. And it's why I bring this training to you every single day, every business day. Before we get started, do me a favor, help buyers, help me remember who you are, help the people in the community remember who you are. If you haven't done so already, put your company name and your core competency, 2 or 3 words, into the chat. Let us know who you are. I like how Tamika, you also put in your website, right? Go ahead and do that. Put your website in there. Link to your company page on LinkedIn if you've got that. There's nothing wrong with letting people know who you are. That's one of the reasons that we do this training. One is to teach you, obviously, and give you actionable things to do. And the second is to help build a community, help 2 or more of you meet each other where you might be able to help succeed. Many of us can succeed in the federal market, and the way we go to succeed, or the way we can succeed, is by helping each other. Finally, I wanted to say thank you very much to our sustaining members. We're not funded by the federal government. We're not funded by large prime contractors. We're self-funded. Sustaining members like me and you are the ones who make this training available to small businesses out there. So we just wanted to say thank you very much. We appreciate your support. All right, let's go ahead and dive deeper into how you can scale your business for success. And I want to begin with those 3 phases of revenue maturity. So this is important, by the way, whether you're just getting started, like that person who just got their cage code, right? They should absolutely be thinking about these 3 phases of revenue maturity. But also if your business has been around a while, relook at it and go, what can I be learning from this on the maturity model? And if you think about maturity model of an organization, right? It's not like I used to be an immature boyfriend. Right? It's like, when you grow up, it's not that level of maturity. It's more like maturity of going from being a toddler or an infant to a toddler to a teenager to an adult kind of thing, right? Our businesses go through the same way. ISO, the whole point of that is a maturity path, process maturity, CMMI, right? Software maturity model. And so the same thing can happen for businesses. And I've done this before where I've laid out the small business maturity model, how across your entire business, how you can keep maturing the organization, preparing you to have larger and larger contracts, right? In this case, the revenue maturity model that I'm talking about are these 3 stages of making money when you come into the government contracting world. And so the first step, or the first phase of making money as a government contractor, is you need to feed yourself and your company. It's that simple, right? And if I can use baseball today, and by the way, if you don't know baseball, take 5 minutes and go learn baseball, because there's enough of us out there who quote baseball, Star Wars, and a couple other things. These are just cultural references that'd be good to know. But I like baseball because it's pretty easy to understand once you got a grasp of the game. 4 bases. You want to get on one of the 3 bases and then score on the 4th base, basically a home plate. And the idea of feeding yourself is just to get on base. You're just trying to get on base and start making money that will feed you and your family and will give you enough money to grow your company so you can pay for your internet and your any subscriptions you sign up for, et cetera, right? Your LinkedIn subscription. Usually this first phase is about subcontracting under small businesses. It's the easiest way to get in. And I'm going to talk in depth about this in a minute. But if you're just getting into the government contracting world, go team up with small businesses and get a piece of a contract there where you can show your expertise and start growing. An example of how much money we might be talking about, you want to look at your numbers, right? Your minimal cost, including business expense like a phone, the internet, or whatever, and any money you want to bring into your house. That's your minimal cost. And so let's just use, for today's example, 100,000, because that leads me into the second phase of revenue maturity. The second phase is to get fed, right? You and your business get fed by others on your team. You want to be fed by the profits that's coming from the money that they're bringing in. So think of that like scoring a run. If feeding yourself is getting on base, well, getting fed by others in your company is scoring a run, right? You're not trying to win the game yet. You're just trying to get on base and score a run. Now you're on the board, so to speak. And the idea here is that you're trying to hire enough people in your company that their profit, the profit from their efforts, will pay for you, which is exactly what we want to happen, because then we're getting you out of the business, out of working in the business and working on the business, is that line that's out there. And so again, at this stage, you're still probably just subcontracting under smalls. There are enough small businesses out there pulling in over $100 billion a year in federal contracts that you should be able to find contracts with teaming partners who are small businesses like yours, just a little bit bigger. So usually you're subbing under subcontractors when you're getting fed by others on your team. So I want you to think about how you can get fed, just using numbers game for a second. A minute ago, I said the cost was 100,000. That's what you need to bring in to eat and to feed your company, right? It could be 200,000, it could be 50 bucks. It doesn't matter. $100,000 is our example. And so if you think about the people you have billable on a client project, let's say they're 10% profitable. If they're 10% profitable, that means for every 100,000 they're billing, they're making $10,000 profit, which can go towards feeding you. So that means you need 10 people making $10,000 profit to bring in the $100,000 that is necessary to feed you and your company. So you want to get to 10 people. And you can move these numbers around, right? If you're at a 20% profit margin, which my companies always were at 20% net profit, I'm not even talking about gross profit, right? Just net profit, I was bringing in 20%. And so I only needed 5 people at that $100,000 range. If your billable rate is higher, right? Say you're billing at, instead of $50 an hour, which is the example I'm using, you're billing at $100 an hour or $125, $150 an hour. That changes, but what you're trying to do is to hire people, 4 people, 10 people, getting to that stage where then you can work on phase 3, which is growing your company. So you want to feed yourself, phase 1 of the revenue maturity. Second thing is to get fed by others on your team, basically their profits feeding you. And then the third one is now that you're getting fed by the team, now you can start growing your company. So if you were getting on base in the first phase, and second phase, you're scoring a run, this third phase is now about winning the game. And so in this particular case, what you want is to have a focused offer. The way you grow your company is really now be able to take the time, instead of taking any contract you can get, really focusing your offer down into this is what we sell and this is what we want to be known for, which allows you to then really begin to build a team within your company of subject matter experts. For example, say you're doing cybersecurity. If you're also taking projects that do software development or data or some other stuff, pretty soon your people are all in different career paths, if you will. But if they're all in cyber, then they're all getting trained, similar certifications, projects, they're able to help each other, lessons learned are going back and forth. And so, of course, there's a level of cyber and software development, but it's different than if you just began to build a team around a subject matter expertise, which is linked to your focused offer. And then the third thing that comes from this idea of growing your company is you will begin to start growing past performances in the direction you want. And what I mean by that is if you want to make $10 million as a company, the fastest way, strongest way is to have past performances that have led to that $10 million range. And you can do the same thing at $100 million. How do you get to $100 million? Well, you're not going to get to $100 million if you have past performance spread across all different focus areas, right? But if you're a cybersecurity firm and you begin to build up $100,000 cybersecurity past performances, and then $500,000, and then $1 million cybersecurity past performances, they begin to allow you to get the next size contract because people look in and say, this company is doing cyber. These are the cybersecurity experts. They're subject matter experts, and they have a lot of them. When we talk with them, we feel like we're talking to trusted advisors. When we look at their content, we feel like we're looking at trusted advisors. And anyway, so the point of these 3 phases is that you want to work your way up to that. Don't jump at the 3rd phase, which is trying to grow your company at that bigger level. First feed yourself, then get fed by your team, and then grow your company. You'll be able to build it much smoother that way. So if that makes sense to you, what I'm saying there on the 3 phases of revenue maturity, put in the chat easy as 1, 2, 3, because really getting to that $1 million or $10 million is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Feed yourself, get fed, and then grow your company. Okay, so the second thing as it relates to scaling your company and how you can scale your company in the federal market is to think about the federal revenue paths, right? There's 3 paths to federal revenue and only 3, the way I describe it. So the 3 paths are: you can subcontract under small businesses. They have the prime contract, you're the subcontractor. The second way is you can prime contract directly with an agency. And the third way is you can subcontract under large prime contractors. And the reason I say these 3 paths is because this is the order I think you should do it. It's the best order because they lead into each other. So let's talk about subcontracting under smalls. By the way, before I go too much further onto that, what I'm recommending now, by the way, is not for just small businesses doing $1 million or less or something. This is for large billion-dollar businesses as well. They should have a plan to subcontract under smalls. If small businesses are getting $150 billion as prime contractors in the federal space, then as a large business, I want to get a piece of that. I want to come in and be able to get 49% of a $10 million contract or a $100 million contract, right? So they should also subcontract under a small business. The order that I'm doing it in, though, is that when you come in and you're just getting started, you need to get experience. You need to get experience on every single aspect of government contracting, which is totally fine. This is no different than sports. When you think about when you're growing up and you're on different teams, if you played any level of sports, right? You play in a junior league, a peewee league, and then maybe you go to high school and you're on junior varsity, and then college, and then pro. That's kind of a rough path that you go, but you don't jump straight to the professional league. You start early on because you learn how to play the game. You learn the language of the sport. When you subcontract under a small business, it's kind of the same. You're able to learn the language of government contracting. You're able to learn the language of a particular agency that you're targeting. When you go forward and start working with a small business, they tend to want to have you come in more often than not because they don't do everything. And so if you can bring a subject matter expertise, even as a one-person company, if you're bringing an expertise, then they'll be happy to talk with you about putting you on the team. They'll be happy to talk with you about other opportunities and grow. And so this is really good for businesses in particular as you're just getting started. One other thing to keep in mind is I was just working with a customer where they'll get 51%, somebody else get 49%. But if they're a veteran or service disabled veteran-owned firm, and they find a small business like yours that's an SDVO, if they bring you in, they can still team with the large and give them 49%, or team with anybody and give them 49%, but they can give you 5 or 10% of their 51%. This is called similarly situated entities. And so there's this option that you can do this with small businesses when you subcontract under them. So there's a lot of value. And for larges, by the way, you're getting access to those set-asides. If an opportunity is being set aside to woman-owned small business, then the larges are out of the play. But if they come in team with a small, now you've got access to it. And so the first path to federal revenue is subcontracting under smalls. And you want to try to get subcontracts that are similar work, because the second path that you're going to go down is priming with agencies. Agencies are, they're geared towards working with small businesses. There's something called simplified acquisition. $250,000 or less, and it's automatically considered for small business set aside. So there's a lot of room for you to be able to, a lot of your entry points for you to get into an agency as a prime contractor. My recommendation, though, is don't ever start until you got some past performance under small. But once you start, if you can bring experience as a subcontractor, then the agency sees you as less of a risk, and they're willing to work with small businesses. They have a whole plan to reach with small businesses, right? 23% or whatever it is now, 3% to a couple of small business programs, 5% to women and 8A small business programs. And so there's a lot of room in there. As you move into the agencies now, you can begin to get deeper understanding and have more conversations. You can begin to have agency intimacy or expertise about the agency, not just about what you offer, but the agency. You can start building strategic partnerships within that agency. Say you're trying to go into DHS, right? You can land a contract that's $500,000 or $5 million or whatever. You start getting that past performance. And so that's that second revenue path. When I teach people a 5-year strategy or how to plan their 5-year strategic plan out, and we look at that, I always make sure they're looking at all three paths. And so we talked about the small business subcontracting. How are you going to do that? What type of companies and which companies are we going to work with? When you look at the agency, how are we focusing down into just a couple of agencies that fit our target market, et cetera? And then the third path, this leads to the third path, which is to revenue success here, is subcontracting under large businesses. When you subcontract under a large business, first off, the sky's the limit, but the risk threshold is risk tolerance is really low. They have no interest in dealing with small businesses that will introduce risk to the large business. The large businesses are concerned about their customers and their customers' mission. They're never going to bring in a small business that jeopardizes that. And so what they're looking for is companies that have proven experience as part of a team, so under small businesses, and proven experience working with an agency. If you've got that and you've had expertise, then now you're attractive to a large. And that's why I always say that's the third step, is because they have higher criteria before they work with you. Agencies actually have lower criteria before they work with you. And so, as you move forward, you want to work with large prime contractors and to begin to get on their team. From a rough number, just so you understand, large prime contractors generally have to pony up 30% of their win to small business. What that means is they have to have a subcontracting plan in place that says, hey, we're going to give you $1 billion contract. But as the federal government, we want to make sure small businesses are getting a fair piece of that pie. You need to give us a plan that shows us how you're going to work with small businesses to include them in this contract. So the number might vary, but 30% is basically the rough number. So a $1 billion contract, $300 million is targeted theoretically to smalls, but the largest don't have to do that. They can take the penalty for not doing that. They won't do it because somebody says they have to. What they're looking for is for you to be able to bring in your expertise. I don't want to go too far on that particular path, but the point is, when you're ready and you can bring strong core competencies to that large, and when you can bring agency knowledge, federal prime experience into them, and maybe you have access to contract vehicles that they don't, when you can bring this to the largest, then they'll work with you. So if I bring this all the way back, right? And by the way, I have a handout on these three paths, federal revenue paths. So if you want that, put that in the chat that just says 3-path handout into the chat, and I'll send you that handout. But remember, when you're planning out how you're going to make money, how you're going to scale within the federal market, you cannot do it all by yourself, which is prime contracting, right? I want a prime contract. That's all by myself. Well, first off, the government needs to know they can trust you. So they're not going to let you in on anything real until you have experience. So it's that catch-22 that you get from banks who will loan you money when you have money. But the other thing is, when you're thinking about scale, your entire life of the company, even billion-dollar firms, should be looking at all three of these verticals. How am I getting revenue from small businesses as a subcontractor? How am I getting money from agencies as a prime contractor? And how am I getting money from large businesses or other large businesses as a subcontractor? When you put a plan in place for those three revenue paths, you're going to be able to scale up. You'll not only get the revenue you want, but through those strategic relationships, your company's maturity will go up because you're gaining insight and knowledge and lessons learned from the people you work with at large businesses, at the agencies, or at other small businesses. And that's hugely valuable out there. So hopefully that made sense on this 3 paths to federal revenue. And again, if you want the handout, put that in the chat and I'll get it to you. Okay, so the last part about scaling in the federal market, something that's vitally important, and I talk about this a lot, is you need to have a 7-step process or a proven process. My process is 7 steps, and I'm going to show you that in a second. But you need to have a proven process for success that people in your company can follow and that you can follow over and over and over again. A proven process leads to success. Remember what I said, if you follow a process A to Z, a process that has been proven out, then you're going to have repeatable, predictable results at the other end. And that's what I want for you. I'm going to show you the 7-step process and walk you through it. But 3 things I want you to keep in mind when I show it to you. First thing is, this process is the same for going after agency business or going after teammates where you want to be a subcontractor, for example, in building relationships there. It's the same. This process is the same whether you're doing business development or whether you're doing capture, right? There's a little minor tweaks in there, but basically it's the same process. And then the third thing I want you to consider when you follow a proven process like the 7-step process I'm going to show you, you can consider it a health check on your business. Are we doing the right things? When you look at these 7 steps, you can do a health check and ask whoever's in your company, right? If you got a small or big company, where are we on these 7 steps? Are we actually moving forward? It's the same thing, by the way, with the 3 revenue paths. You can sit there and do a health check on that, a revenue health check. Where are we? Do we have a plan? Are we making enough, et cetera? So keep that in mind. This diagram I'm going to show you, I have it as a handout as well. So if you want that, you can put 7-step process into the chat and I will send that to you as well. So let me go ahead and share my window here. So let me just wrap up with this 7-step process and walk you through it, right? And let's start at the end of the 7-step process, sales, because that's what you want. Scaling up is about organizational maturity and a lot of things, but fundamentally, it's about making enough sales to generate the revenue you need in order to do the things you want. And so in order to achieve sales here at the bottom of the circle, you need, over on the right of the circle, you need to send winning proposals to the government. Before you can send winning proposals, you must have slam dunk opportunities, these opportunities that are absolutely wins for you. And in order to have, to even learn about or have slam dunk opportunities in your pipeline, you need to have strategic relationships with the government, with program offices, et cetera, strategic relationships with small businesses, strategic relationships with large businesses. And so you need to have strategic relationships to learn about opportunities. In order to have strategic relationships, you must pick up the phone and call somebody. You must have those first meetings, right? We call this outreach. And before outreach, you need to know who you're going to call at an agency or at a company. And so that's targeting, understanding who those people are and getting their names, numbers, and emails. And all of that begins with the first step of the 7-step process, which is research, right? This idea of understanding the agency you want to sell to, understanding the teammates you want to work with. People buy from those they know, like, and trust, but they also want to know that you know, like, and trust them, that you have taken the time to research them will help them know that you're doing your homework, that you're trying to understand them. But also by doing this research, it will help you find the people you want to reach out to. I just did a training earlier this week about artificial intelligence and machine learning and how you can go grow that vertical within the federal space. And a huge portion of the training that I did was showing research, which led to identifying a whole bunch of people in the AI ML space in the federal market that I could then reach out to. And then outreach, I have a whole training separate on each one of these, but outreach is about this idea of picking up the phone, having introduction calls and trying to learn about that customer or learn about that company that you want to have a relationship with. First, try to build a relationship with them. In a relationship, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. It's reaching out, learning what's important to them, sharing a little bit about what's important to you, and then moving slowly towards how you might work together. Maybe when you get to an opportunity, you can start talking about that and you can start digging a little bit more into it. But what the whole reason I want to show you this today, this 7-step process, is whether you're doing business development or whether you're doing capture, if you want to scale your company in the federal market, you must have a process that is as simple as this so that everybody in your company can rattle it off, right? Research, targeting, outreach, relationships, opportunities, proposals lead to sales, right? Those lead to each other. And then you can sit down and have that conversation I mentioned where it's a checklist, right? Are we winning enough? No. Are we writing enough proposals? Yes. No. Right? Are we identifying enough slam dunk opportunities? Do we have enough strategic relationships? How many are enough? Right? This ability to start working your way through the 7 steps will allow you to be able to, run a checklist for your company and a health check on what you're doing as it relates to a process. But you must have that process in place before you can move forward. So again, if you want a copy of the handout that we have that has that 7-step process, put it into the chat, 7-step process. I did a training for the SBA recently, sidebar, and I went out and trained their small businesses in their district. And it was so awesome because one of the audience who was on, and this was a Teams call where the cameras were visible, and somebody who asked the question shared their camera. And in the back, they had that 7-step process. And they said, I'm constantly looking at that, right? My genius, if I have a genius, is to simplify things that are just way too complex. And I love this 7-step process because we've been following it for 5 years since we basically put that in place in teaching people. And when others see this, they're able to move forward. And I hope you find that same belief in a trusted process like this one. Hey, if you want to scale your business, don't try to win the game on the first play. Just get on base, right? Then get 1 run scored, then repeat over and over so that you can win the game later. But think about it incrementally. If you found today's training valuable, do me a favor. Become a sustaining member of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce today. Continue supporting the work that we're doing and making it available for everybody else. If your company is struggling with starting and building relationships in the federal market, and that's something I can help you with, consider our 90-day BD Accelerator workshop. Just go ahead and reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we can talk more about it. Remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process.